What's up guys, it's Rowan here from ArtaSmart TV. And with end of year 11 exams approaching, these are the last exams between you and the HSC. After this, everything counts. And these end of year 11 exams as a result can either be a springboard, right, that sets you up really strongly for an awesome year 12, or they can be a bit of a dead weight, right? And they can cause a lot of extra work that you need to do to catch up as part of year 12. So in this video, what I'm going to be sharing with you is a step-by-step plan to help you nail your end of year 11 exams so they can be a springboard for a successful year 12. Let's jump in and find out the critical steps that you need to follow to nail your end of year 11 exams. So step number one in preparing for your end of year 11 exams is to get your study notes up to date. Now, one, this is going to be really critical just to consolidate everything, to make sure that you've got everything that you need in one place to prepare for these exams, because it's the first time in all of year 11 you're being examined on everything that you have covered in that year. Now, additionally though, the actual act of constructing your notes, pulling them together is also going to be really powerful from a memory retention point of view. It's going to build memory and that's going to help you prepare for your exams. Additionally, when we interview year 12 students and we ask them, what's the one thing that you wish that you did differently when you started year 12? They all say unanimously, we wish we started our study notes on time. We got ahead of them because it really screwed us over later on. So the idea here is it's also about starting and ending year 11 in the way that you want to start year 12. You want to end year 11 being on top of everything, having your notes ready, great habit, good to go, so that when you start year 12, you're equally using that same habit moving forward, which is going to be really, really powerful for you. Finally, the reason you want to get your notes up to date is it's going to consolidate all of your year 11 knowledge so that you've got the strong foundation for year 12. So it's not just about nailing your end of year 11 exams, although it'll help. It'll also be about setting you up for year 12. So step number two, you want to identify your weak areas and essentially study them first. Because let's be honest, your first tendency when it comes to starting to study for these end of year 11 exams is going to be to go back to topic one, right? So you're going to have a linear approach, go back to the beginning and start revising through all of your topics. And in theory, that's a good idea because of course it's an end of year exam and you're going to be examined on everything. But honestly, it can actually be a really poor approach because you might go back to topic one and actually discover that you know it really, really well. And yet, because you're doing this linear approach, you spend more time on it than necessary. So the real critical thing that we need to do here is to focus on weak areas and spend more time on them in your study so that when you get into the exam, number one, you nail those, you get them right. And number two, you also build a much stronger foundation for year 12. Because ultimately that's what this is all really about. It's about making sure that when you hit year 12, your year 11 stuff is rock solid and so that you can focus on nailing year 12. So how do you do this? Really simply, when you get that end of year 11 exam notification, go through and examine what topics are going to be examined. Depending on your school, they may not be examining you on all of the topics over the entire year. They may be picking a couple in particular. And once you've gone through that, I want you to identify within those topics that are being examined, which ones you are worst at. So ask yourself, if I got this in the exam next week, how would I go? Would I, do really awesome or would I really struggle? And if the answer is, of course, that you would really struggle, you're going to start studying those topics first. Throw out the linear approach, instead double down and work on your weak areas. That's going to be the critical thing you can do in how you study for these end of year 11 exams. So step number three, when it comes to studying, whatever you do, always write. Now in the lead up to these end of year 11 exams, there's going to be a lot of content you're going to want to cover. And honestly, the default that you may find yourself sort of gravitating towards in terms of study technique is to pull out your notes and read them. And to read them and read them and read them and read them in the hope that it gets locked into your brain. And the reason for that is if you've got lots of information to cover, reading your notes is a fairly quick and efficient way to get coverage, right? To cover a range of material in a very quick period of time. But honestly, it sucks. It's absolutely horrible in actually building memory retention. In fact, estimates reveal that you may only remember up to 10% of what you've studied via reading 2 weeks later. So as you can see, not very good. So reading is the worst thing that you can do. Now, the reason is it's really passive. We take information in through our eyes and ears all the time, and I'm sure you've had it happen to you where you've been reading something, you've got to the bottom of the page and you've gone, what on earth did I just read? Like completely zoned out. And that's the point. So what we've got to do is we've got to move your study from passive to active. And the way we're going to move it to active is we're going to get pen to paper. Yes, there are times your teacher has asked you to just copy everything from the board and you've been able to do it autopilot. We're not talking about that because that's just rote learning and you're not actively thinking anyway. So what I want you to do is once you've got your notes organized, which remember was step number 1, and you've identified the key areas of weakness that you're going to focus on, I want you to get out your study notes, I want you to get out an exercise book, and I want you to write down, particularly in those challenge areas, like the key ideas, draw flowcharts and diagrams to show the relationships. Work through it with pen and paper. It's going to be incredibly powerful for building your memory and your understanding, and it's also going to improve your attention by the time you get into the exam. So remember, the rule is always write, never read. So step number 4 in preparing for your end of year 11 exams is to double down on mistakes. Now I get with the new syllabus going around that end of year 11 exams may be a far and few between. But ultimately, hopefully your school has given you a couple that you can work through. And so critically, work through these. But when you make mistakes, that mistake is actually a powerful bit of information that you need to use to actually work on, because it's going to tell you what you're probably going to screw up in the exam. Now, right now, when you make a mistake on a practice question or a past paper exam, what do you do with it? My bet is that you get it, you look at it, okay, look at the answers, reverse engineer it, solve it, and then move on. And that's the critical mistake, moving on. Because that's akin if you were, playing soccer or netball to getting something wrong in the game, screwing it up, and then just going and practicing it once, hoping that by doing it once, the next time you nail it. And we know that's not true. You need to do it a couple of times and put the reps in. So every time you make a mistake in the lead up to your end of year 11 exams, in the past papers that you're working on, what I want you to do is find 2 similar questions. That's right, 2 similar questions so that you double down on the mistakes. Because in an exam, when you've got a timer going, you've got people next to you writing really fast, freaking you out, that pressure is going to cause all of the weaknesses to unfold. And that's why if you haven't doubled down on your mistakes, you're not going to have nailed these to really improve your results and reduce the silly mistakes you make in your exams. So there you go, guys. That is the 4 steps to prep effectively for your end of year 11 exams so that you can use them as a springboard for year 12. If you have any questions about preparing for your end of year 11 exams or about preparing and making the step up to year 12, leave it in the comments below. One of our team, one of our incredible teachers, tutors and mentors will get back to you with some suggestions and some advice. Of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We do videos every single week and they cover across the entirety of that year 12 journey. So that way you can procrastinate productively in year 12 on YouTube. So hit subscribe and I will see you next week.